what stands between us and where we want to go is never what we think it is. It's not the economy, it's not the president, it's not that somebody already dominated the health food industry or dominated Facebook advertising or dominated TV advertising or there's no room left. It's never that. It's always the story we tell ourselves on why we can't achieve that. And if I wanted to boil it down, I would just say, what is your biggest why? What's your biggest goal that you would love? If it was a year from now, we were sitting here, you're watching this, and it was a year later, and it was the best year of your life, what would be the biggest thing that would have changed in your life? From money, income, family, love, intimacy, being a better dad, mom, whatever that is, if you say to yourself, I would love that goal. Like I'd love to have my company doing $1 million a year in net profit so I could have freedom for my family. Then just say but. And whatever that but is usually your story. It's like, I would love my company to be doing $1 million yet, but I live in a smaller town and there's just not enough people to do it. Or the internet's so saturated, there's no room to advertise on Facebook anymore because everybody and their brother's on. Whatever that story is usually your story, and that's the results you get. And that story is the thing standing between you and your next level. And I know people are watching right now going, oh, Dean, that's nice. You guys got money now, so it's easy. I don't have any money. I don't have a partner. I don't have any business experience. This economy's not right for what we do. And where there's that old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If your story is that's what you'll continue to get. So what I would say is, if I was going to boil it down, is find what that story is. Now to you might be saying, Dean, you're saying it's a belief, it's reality. And maybe it's phase 3, but reality is nothing more than our perception of a situation, right? We all know that. You've read that about it, you've watched it on Tom's show, everybody has said it, but maybe this is the first time you actually think about it, that reality you think is holding you back is really just the story. So there's 2 things I say, is go find somebody else with that same story. Like go look at your evolution, where you were on your couch, no money, right? Go look at Richard Branson's story, look at Tony Robbins' story, look at John Paul DiGiorio or all the amazing books. I've read every book in there. That's amazing, the people that you've got to interview and meet. But read all those stories and realize that, first of all, that story you have is probably a lie, right? So if you can find proof, like leverage that it's a lie, that's one thing. But then the one that would get me is, I love aspiration. I love to look and say, look what you did, man. I want to get there. If he did it, I can do it. But sometimes you need the pain as well. So what I like to do is, I like to take that story and think it's 5 years from now, and think it's 10 years from now, and you're still in the same exact spot you are now. You're still worried, you still have envy, you still want more, you desire more, you want to take care of your family, you want to provide more. And think that story, those 2 sentences, is the thing holding you back. Do you really want to give that story that much power? And then think it's 10 years from now, and that story is still done. And all of a sudden, for me, I think, am I going to let that story stop me? I brought my son with me today. Am I going to stop from giving him the opportunities that I didn't? I have 2 children. I'm not raising entitled kids. I want to give him massive opportunity. I don't want to leave him a trust fund. I'm going to leave him massive opportunity and train him. I'm not going to let any story get in the way of me being that dad. And if a story pops up that says, hey, I can't make baseball this week because of this, I'll change the damn story. I'll fist fight with that story. And I'll look at the pain I'll have if I keep that story. So I love the aspirational part of, this story will stop me from my new life, but I also like, are you gonna let that story screw you around for the next 5, 10, 15 years? I mean, man, we're gonna be 90 laying in a bed looking up like before we know it. And do you wanna think I squeezed all I could out of life, or did I let just beliefs that other people gave me hold me back? About 2 years out of high school, my dad goes through his 4th divorce, and it hits him really hard. And it hit him so hard that he checked out. And he said, hey, I'm not going back to the collision shop. I'm not paying the rent, it's done. And I was like, at that phase of my life, Tom, I was embarrassed more than anything. Like, I remember that point, because I was like, I'm not going to college, but I own Paul and Dean Auto Body with my dad. And it was like, in my head, not realizing I'm 20-0, I'm like, life's over. I have no money in the bank. Life is just screwed. And I started telling myself that story. And I lost the spark I'd had since I was about 12. Like, since 12, I'm like, I'm not that smart, but I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it. And I lost it. And I'm going to friends like, hey, if your dad or anybody you know needs a car fix, I'm doing it out of my garage. And I know my friends are like, And then all of a sudden, so this is what I'll share with you. Maybe you've had a story worse than that, or maybe a story not as bad as that. But I remember being in there and saying to myself, like, what the hell am I doing telling myself this crap? Like, if I feel this way, I'm gonna be my dad. And I remember at that moment, I changed the story and I started thinking to myself, and it didn't happen overnight, so this is where I wanna encourage you, when you find the bad story, find a way to just reverse the whole thing. I'm like, no. Because I don't have a college degree, I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna do this. Because I was always small, I'm gonna do this. Because I have no money, I'm gonna do this. Because my friends think I can't, I'm gonna do this. And all of a sudden, I started changing this story, not overnight, but over weeks, it became my empowering story. I wasn't looking at a deficit. I'm like, screw you guys. You think I'm not gonna do this because I don't have what you have? I'm gonna blow right past you, whether that's a good thought or not. At the time, it served me. That's not how I look at things now, but at the time it served me. Some of it was, and I was able to reverse that story, and that story got me through. Just like what got you from going to the couch, getting change, to where what you've created. It's unbelievable the impact you've made on the world. But if we had the wrong story, if we had the wrong beliefs, we're screwed before we start. I'm glad that we went down this road, because if one person watching today just says, screw this old story, and you spent the time to make that an empowering story, then I think the game changes forever.
Do you have people that ask you like, hey, I'm rewriting my story, but it doesn't feel real? What advice do you have for them?
Rewriting my story and it doesn't feel real. Of course it doesn't feel real, because you've been living the old story so long. All change all change freaks people out, whether they believe that they like change or not. And I think not only been telling yourself the story so long, is when you tell yourself a bad story, we look for things. Do you ever have something bug you, like everybody does, and you Google it and you find all the negative stuff, like, oh my God, I got cancer, I have a tumor, right? It's the same thing with our insides, right? When we have a story that's holding us back, we find social proof all around us that tells us it's the truth, right? You talk to your aunt who says, hey, listen, rich people get to do those things, we don't. You just play it safe. And all of a sudden, subconsciously, you're like, oh, maybe that story's right. So you have all these years of, sometimes years, months, weeks, whatever it is, you have the story, and then you only collect the data that supports the story, so your subconscious can be okay with playing small.
What I love in your real life story is that it wasn't like you were saying, oh, this epiphany, I look up, the stars align. It was, okay, you have the trouble with your dad and his most recent divorce.
Yeah.
Looks like everything's collapsing. You get it back. It's going in the right direction. We're winning again. This is incredible. Yeah. And then you make a deal to sell your car flipping business.
Yeah.
And then that goes to hell.
Yeah.
And in that moment, the story comes rushing back of maybe everybody was right. Maybe I wasn't smart enough.
Absolutely.
And so that, in fact, you just posted this on your Instagram. I thought it was so brilliant. It was the life of an entrepreneur, and it showed this like, I'm winning, everything's amazing. I screwed up shit. I really suck. I'm winning again. Yeah, I've got this figured. And it just like this back and forth, back and forth. How did you, when you thought, oh, I've overcome this, I've got the empowering story, and then it all falls apart again, the inner villain, as you call it, like starts speaking up. How did you deal with it the second time around? Was it easier? Was it harder?
I think it was harder. It was harder because it was bigger. Because, so the story, just so you said, I ended up, after that, I worked in that little garage. I was working on one car, my story changed. I started getting powered 2 cars, 3 cars. I went to the woman who owned the collision shop my dad had rented for her, Mrs. Mary Lopresti. She was a great old lady, elderly lady, and we became friends, and she sold me the collision shop with no money down. Wow. So I bought the collision shop my dad lost. I named it Dean Collision Center. I took the Paul off. I was mad at my dad. So I named it Dean Collision Center. I bought it and I started, and I got Enterprise Rent-A-Car account. I got Hertz Rent-A-Car account. We went from this rinky-dink collision shop to a successful collision shop. Started buying and flipping more houses. And then in the late 90s, I wanted to teach people how I made money with cars. I used to wholesale cars. If you ever went and traded in a car and they give you a low price, I'd run ads in the classified, said, hey, if you're getting a low offer, call me, I'll sell your car for you. And then I'd match buyers and sellers and make money in mills. So I created a course called Motor Millions, and I'd watch Tony Robbins on infomercials, and I had no idea what I was doing. I put all the money I had together, hit credit cards, and I filmed my first infomercial in 1999. And I sold a course called Motor Millions, and went on TV, and was literally running Motor Millions, my education business, out of the collision shop. Like I had 3 phones on the desk, and oh no, that's the Motor Millions phone. And we ramped up, and I had no idea what I was doing. I knocked on a lot of doors and finally rolled out on TV and Probably got to a $10 million a year company, the trials and error of figuring it out, right? A lot of mistakes because I had no idea what I was doing. And I was about 3 years into that, and I wanted to teach everybody real estate. And I had somebody come in and offer to buy Motor Millions. And they took the company and came in like, hey, you're running like a mom and pop, we're gonna turn it into a company. And they blew the company up, like in 9 months. Like as fast as you could blow a company up, they blew it up. And I remember when they were making all these changes, and I remember thinking, well, I'm not that smart. These guys are smarter than me, so they're probably doing it right, even though it didn't feel right. So long story short, the company went belly up, but my name was attached to it. And they didn't pay refunds for people who bought my courses and stuff. So I went to court and literally took back the debt. And then over the next 2 years, I paid off 100% of the people who had bought, even though they bought through the company who bought it. My bills were ridiculous, and all of a sudden cash flow was shut off immediately. And I'm fighting to take back a dead company. Like it was like I gave them a thoroughbred that was ready to grow, and they broke its legs and gave it back to me, and I had to fight and pay to take it back, then pay it off, and I thought I was gonna lose it. And those limiting beliefs at a different level came back and said, see, you didn't go to college, you didn't study enough. You weren't smart enough to own a $10 million a year company. You weren't smart enough to negotiate right. What do you think you're doing? Get this paid off, go back, literally I was thinking, go back to Marlboro, go back to just real estate, car business, you can make yourself 300 grand a year. Like literally those beliefs came in all over again. And I would bet to say what did it for me then was two things. Is I started thinking back of all the things that I went through, and it was just as painful when I was broke, getting my first deal done, broke, living in a bathroom, or broke in that garage, going to the collision shop. And I realized that it doesn't matter how many zeros are at the end or how big your company is, the pain is still there. And if you have the ability to get through a death, get through a hard time, get through something horrible in your life, you have the same ability, and you'd probably agree this, when your company's got 3 zeros or 9 zeros or 10 zeros, it does, like the stress and the worry is almost the same if you look back. It's just, you're just handling bigger problems. And I think, I mean, you want to upgrade your life, upgrade your problems, right? But I think that's what got me through is I literally looked back and said, wow, I thought I was dead then. I wasn't. I thought I wasn't going to make it there. I did. And I started this mantra. If I can get through this shit, I can get through anything. And I remember I would just walk and I would say it. Oh, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. This is my time. This is my purpose. This is my calling. I went from the worst time of my life to being empowered and motivated, and the energy I took my team with me. They felt the energy, they felt the motivation, and we just blew right through to another level.